Since Antonio Conte joined Tottenham at the end of 2021, he has managed to secure them a Champions League spot, beating our fierce rivals Arsenal to that final spot. Now it looks like the league has taken a complete U-turn as Arsenal now sit pretty at the top of the Premier League table, playing quality football, while Antonio Conte's Tottenham are spiralling down the chain. Now not much has changed since last season, and in fact Spurs have actually added a couple of players, including Perisic, Richarlison, Longley, Bissouma, Spence and Forster. The formations stay the same, the tactics stay the same, however Tottenham's defensive record has been atrocious. So rather than focus on the negatives, in this video I'm going to look at Conte's Tottenham and see how he can turn them into a title winning team. Now we'll be looking at the current formation changes, the current state of the personnel at Tottenham. This is how to fix Antonio Conte's Tottenham. I've done a lot of research over the last few days into Conte's previous teams, including Chelsea and most recently Inter Milan, to see how they differ or how they're similar to Spurs and what we can do to get closer to those sort of teams where he was able to win the leagues in both divisions. Now at this point I think we know Conte's favoured tactics, but we're going to be looking at two formations. That is the 3-4-3 which Spurs currently play and the 3-5-2 which he used at Inter Milan. Now the 3-4-3 obviously suits Spurs quite a lot given the personnel they have, with Kulusevski and Son playing out on the wings, whereas in a 3-5-2 there is a deep line playmaker sitting in behind the two central midfielders. What I quickly want to do is look at the 3-5-2, which I do believe is actually Antonio's favoured system, especially as he used it most recently at Inter Milan. Firstly, the goalkeeper needs to be good with his feet, have great distribution and be able to play out from the back. All three centre-backs need to be able to be good ball-playing defenders, with the left centre-back preferably being left-footed. Now the defensive mid in this formation is more of a deep line playmaker, which is what Conte turned Brozovic into. Bearing in mind before he joined, Brozovic was more of an attacking midfielder for Inter Milan. This is effectively going to be the player that connects the defence to the midfield and the attack. Now with the other two central midfielders, it's usually the case that one of them is a Medsala, apologies for any pronunciation, but this is a midfielder that has a little bit more creative freedom and plays wide of the three in the middle, that has a little bit more license to get forward but also does plenty of the defensive work. An example of this at Inter Milan would be Barella, and he'll be joined alongside another ball winner slash playmaker. Now the wing backs are obviously crucial to a Conte system as they need to be quite creative, providing with attack, not just defence. They need to be great crossers and passers and also contribute in and around the box. Looking at previous players, Hakimi and Alonso actually had their highest goal scoring seasons under Conte playing in this sort of system. Now the first striker can sit a little bit deeper and hold up the ball, which is sort of what Lukaku was doing at Inter Milan, and the second striker is further forward, usually a bit quicker. An example of that would obviously be Lautaro Martinez. Now this formation effectively becomes a 3-3-4 in attack because the two wing backs join the strikers further up the pitch and then comfortably sits in at a tight 5-3-2, creating no space in and around the area, which to be honest is where I feel Spurs leave a little bit too much. Just look back at the Arsenal game where Odegaard was able to have that shot from outside the box with hardly anyone closing him down. Now compare that to the 3-4-3 and the goalkeeper, the defence and the wing backs effectively operate in the same way, but the two central midfield roles are slightly different. Now both of these centre mids need to be good at carrying the ball forward and also intercepting on defence. You're going to need some pure engines in this midfield because they're going to be doing a lot of work so that they don't get completely overrun when there's three in midfield. Compare that to the 3-5-2 where they've got a little bit of defensive cover from the deep line playmaker. Now the best example is at Chelsea with Conte, who was an absolute engine in midfield, running all over the show, given freedom to win the ball back with high intensity, and there's no surprise he could do well in that formation considering he was one of the best centre mids in the world, if not the best at that time. I would argue that Tottenham do not really have this level of midfielder. Now Højbjerg and Bentancur have been playing like this for a while at Spurs, and at times they have done very, very well together. But Højbjerg at the moment seems to only really show it in glimpses, and when Bentancur isn't available like he hasn't been recently, then we really do seem to struggle with only two in midfield. Now when Sarr actually made his debut against Arsenal, I thought he operated quite well in this two midfield because he was shifting the ball quickly out to the wing backs, was demanding the ball from Lloris, and was actually being quite brave on the ball compared to some of our other midfielders. But like I said earlier, just look back to the Arsenal game where there's three man in midfield up against our two and Højbjerg and Sarr, and they just got completely overrun. And then in transition, Odegaard had all the space in the world, and our two-man midfield really struggled to come up against that. Now let's compare to Chelsea's 3-4-3, and obviously Eden Hazard was the left winger in this formation, and he was so crucial to their goals and assists alongside Diego Costa up front. So when defending, Hazard was allowed to operate a little bit further upfield compared to Conte's 3-5-2 defensive shape, which meant that Chelsea's formation almost became a lopsided 4-4-2 in defence, with Pedro being a little bit more defensive and covering that right mid spot. Now we almost saw this last year because Son was sort of on on that same Hazard wavelength whereby he was creating a lot of goals, he was scoring a lot of goals alongside Harry Kane. So those two would usually be the furthest up the pitch in our team, with Kulusevski helping out on defense a little bit more than Son would. But the problem is this season, Son has been completely off of it. He doesn't track back as well as some other defenders do, and he's also not helping with goals or assists as much this season, anywhere near the level he did last year. Now, if we were to play this similar way as Chelsea did under Conte, it almost benefits us now at this moment in time with Son being out of form to switch the lopsided 4-4-2 to the other side. So having Kulusevski and Kane operating further forward, which does mean that you will need a left winger that can help out with defence a lot more than Son is doing at the moment. First person that comes to mind is Richarlison, because he presses relentlessly whenever he's on the pitch, and I do feel like he tracks back and covers a lot more than the likes of Son does this season. Now, because in this instance that does mean that Kulusevski's pushing higher up, the right wing back that's then covering his position in the right mid in this lopsided 4-4-2 needs to be a lot more competent than the ones we have so far in Doherty and Emerson. Because Alonso was having such a great season and was able to push forward and defend, he was able to almost take the left mid spot from Hazard, which allowed Hazard to push further up the pitch, even when they're in the defensive formation. Now, speaking of Son being out of form and not necessarily having the correct right wing back at Spurs, I'm going to currently look at where I think we fall short in this current 3-4-3 model that we are playing right now. The first thing to start with is our goalkeeper. Now, like we said before, in any Conte system, the goalkeeper needs to have great distribution and be able to play out the back. Now, as much as I love Lloris and for his service and everything in the last decade, he is not that type of goalkeeper. He is or was a great shot stopper, but he has never been renowned for using his feet, which is why if you actually look at France, especially during the World Cup, it is very, very rare that the defenders would pass back to him. Like I said earlier, we do sort of need that Kante engine in midfield. And while I think Bentancur and Højbjerg do work well on occasion and have done a lot last year, there seems to be too many games, especially against top 6 opposition, where we just have far too much space left in and around the area for the opposition to be able to attack and shoot from long range. Think back to Ronaldo last year, Ødegaard this season, and again, when Bentancur was injured, Højbjerg just did not look the same player. So potentially would need a midfield of Bentancur and some sort of Kante level central midfielder that can do everything. Now, our right wing back is obviously a massive flaw because they haven't been able to contribute with attacks anywhere near as much as the like of Hakimi, Alonso, even looking at Moses under Conte. And a lot of these times, these wing backs would join in the box and be able to finish chances. And even though Perisic, a player that's worked under Conte, looking at the Man City match, he had a perfect opportunity to slot a ball into the net in the penalty area, but it was blocked because he didn't find the corner. But specifically with our right wing back, it does mean that Kulusevski ends up doing a lot of the work going forward. In reality, then becomes quite easy to defend because, like Man City did throughout the first half in our match, doubled up on Kulusevski and stopped him from crossing in the way he normally would. Now, looking at the centre backs, Dyer and Davis are not good ball playing defenders. Davis is a left back turned centre back, and Dyer is a defensive midfielder who had a very long term injury and was since converted into a centre back. Now, Longley is more of a ball playing centre back and tends to use his left foot to hit balls long into the channels on the left hand side of the pitch, which he did quite a lot at Barcelona. He did it for Brentford and actually managed to whip a ball into the box for us to score, but unfortunately he's just not at that top level and it's just not happening consistently enough. So the left centre back position could 100% do with upgrading. Now, of all the players that we've got, Perisic operates in that left wing back spot the best and gets forward exactly how Conte likes the left wing back to do, like Alonso did for Chelsea. And I do believe he has the most assists in our team currently this season as well. However, we have seen, especially in the Man City match, that he does get caught out defensively a lot, and so far has not been very successful with linking up with Son, unlike Alonso linking up with Hazard in his Chelsea team. Now, the front three really are fine. Kane's playing unbelievably well. Kulusevski's a fantastic player, but Son's form has been very, very poor this season. And I don't think it's to do with playing with Perisic, because at the end of the day, when you actually watch Son in isolation, the ball just gets caught under his feet. He's not able to dribble past players anywhere near the level that we're used to seeing. And I think his confidence is just completely shot. So we've discussed the 3-4-3 specifically at Spurs and comparing that to Chelsea's 3-4-3. And we've also discussed what is needed from a Conte 3-5-2. So in this section, I just want to talk about how changing to a 3-5-2 could actually fix some of Spurs' issues. Now, there are still a few problems with it, but I do think it solves a few issues at Spurs. Now, since the 3-5-2 transitions into a 3-3-4 when in attack, the wingbacks need to be extremely proficient in attacking. Because a lot of the games, they are going to operate pretty much as wingers, especially in the matches where we should be dominating. So obviously this style suits Perisic to a T, since he has been a left winger pretty much his whole career. And let's not forget, we've also got new boy Destiny Udogie coming in the summer, who is currently doing very well playing left wing back with 2 goals and 2 assists in the league this season. And he's also been quite good defensively. But then that obviously means that we need to fix the right wing back situation, bringing in a player that is very good going forward, who can help with goals and assist and is a great crosser. And yes, I know that Emerson scored against Man City, but the reality is we know for a fact that we can upgrade on Emerson and Doherty. And like I said earlier, the 3-5-2 becomes a 5-3-2 defensively, and that should create zero space in and around our box. Now, it should make it a lot more difficult for other teams to attack and drive into our area, creating less shot options. If we were sort of playing that style against Arsenal, Odegaard would have had far less time running through our midfield, finding space on the edge of the area and having a shot and eventually leading to their second goal. One thing that I think this formation change can do is help one player in particular that we signed in the summer, and that is Yves Bissouma. Now, looking at his Brighton days, he was playing much more in a 3-man midfield rather than a 2. Now, under Potter at Brighton, Yves Bissouma would normally operate alongside a more defensive midfielder, giving him license to be a little bit more creative, driving the ball forward, but would also help out massively in the defense. Although so far at Spurs seems to have struggled in a 2-man midfield. And to be honest with you, this may be due to the lack of attacking midfield options as well, because having another DM alongside him like he did at Brighton just gave him a lot more freedom to be able to carry the ball forward. Often he would make quick recoveries, but would often help with driving the ball forward up the pitch vertically. Now, the reason why this might be a struggle for him at Spurs right now is because we don't necessarily operate vertically with our central midfielders. Because of the wing-back system and the way we play, a lot of the movements work sideways, bringing it out to the wing backs and the wingers to create the attacking opportunities from out wide. Now, you can watch any Spurs game and see that even when we're on the edge of the opposition's area, the central midfielders are always shifting the ball left and right rather than driving vertically up the pitch. Now, the good thing about him playing in the 3-man field as well is that he can actually join the attack a lot more often, like he did against Spurs last season, and in fact was able to actually score against us playing in this style. He often excelled collecting the ball deep, breaking through the lines and driving through the midfield. He'll be able to drop back, collect the ball from the DM or the centre backs, drive it forward, working with the other centre mid, and I think that will help with his skill set massively. Or in fact as well, I think Conte could train him to become that deep line playmaker, the defensive mid in this formation, because I think his defensive attributes are very good, especially looking at his time at Brighton. Now, if he was to play in a 2-man midfield, I think it would help having a more of a number 6 alongside him, a pure defensive midfielder. I'm obviously talking about your likes of your Casemiros and Rodris and whatnot, because that would just give us the defensive cover and give Bissouma the license to get forward a lot more than he's currently able to do in this current Spurs side. And again, this formation would then just relieve the burden from Højbjerg and Bentancur, who in fairness have been able to contribute with a lot more goals this season than usual, but that has usually come from situations where we are losing the match, so we have to go forward a lot more in order to win the game, rather than joining the attacks a lot more often from the offset, which is why I do think that we end up losing too many games in the first half. When looking at Inter's team, they had Lukaku sitting a little bit deeper, holding the ball up, whereas Martinez was sort of the faster player, playing a lot further forward and being a lot more clinical with his chances. Now, I think playing Kane and Son in this sort of setup, like I said we did against Liverpool last year, I think would be a lot more beneficial to Spurs. As we know, Kane likes to come deep and collect the ball anyway, so having Son more centrally and a bit further forward to create those runs in behind the defense for Kane to then pick out the passes will create a lot of chances for Spurs. And Kane coming deep has seen him go from a world-class striker to a world-class creative midfielder as well, which is insane. Now, obviously looking at Son's form this season, I think we could also play Richarlison up front as the furthest forward striker, because even looking at how he played for Brazil in the World Cup, he seemed to do a lot better as that central attacker rather than playing on the wing. So if Kane's dropping deep to collect the ball a little bit more, with Richarlison being further forward and making in the runs behind the defenders, I think it's a tactic that could work very well in certain matches. Now, as you might have guessed, this leaves a huge problem for Spurs when changing to this tactic, and that is what to do with Kulusevski. Now, Spurs have found an absolute gem in Kulusevski, and he's been one of my favourite players in the last year since we've bought him, but he clearly operates most successfully when playing right wing. Kulusevski possesses insane ball carrying abilities, often beating the defender 1v1, whether that's kind of on his left or actually shifting onto his right, and has been the main catalyst or creator for a lot of Spurs attacks. Changing to this formation means there's not going to be an out and out attacking midfielder. We're not going to have a right winger, so really the only option would be to play him right wing back, which, to be honest with you, given Conte's track record, isn't totally out of the question. He's converted plenty of wingers into wing back. Now, this isn't a perfect solution by any means, because I do think Kulusevski is far better being further up the pitch as a right winger. However, if there is any coach that can convert a right winger into a successful right wing back, Conte is the man. Think Perisic, Alonso, Moses, young. And I think more importantly, it's more about having the flexibility in the team. When things aren't really working at Spurs, we're not changing the tactics anywhere near as much. We're constantly sticking with a 3-4-3. We're constantly sticking with an out of form Son. Just having the flexibility to be able to switch to a 3-5-2 in a game that needs it is so important. It could be useful for holding on to leagues when we need to be a little bit more defensive. If Kulusevski's injured or run out of gas, it's a perfect chance to bring on Richarlison and Basuma and switch to a 3-5-2 and know that we're still not going to have any issues. But at the end of the day, if you don't fix some of the personnel, especially in defense, none of these tactics are going to work well. Now, in this next video, which is going to be out tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about all of the possible transfer targets that Spurs could aim to sign in order to make the 3-4-3 and the 3-5-2 work and turn Conte's Tottenham into a title-winning team. And please do leave comments on what you think of the current state of affairs at Tottenham under Conte. Right, see you in the next video.